Welcome back, everybody, for another episode of Brace for Impact Extras. I am Benikage. On the far side is Parks, as always, and our special guest for this second Extras episode is the wonderful Vearless. How,
Woo!
how you been, Vearless?
I have to admit, maybe I'm not sure when this will come out, but for me right now, last week was a bit rough because I was ill. But this week has been a lot better. We've wrapped up season 3, which was very exciting. Had an insane ending as well. But yeah, overall, have been good.
Great.
Amazing.
Yeah. The for the viewer, it's the 17th of April when we record
Yeah,
this. So,
yeah.
Way to
but
carbon date us.
Little
I always
rewind.
do. I
Yeah.
always do. So, anyway,
Accidentally sometimes, but
I want to kind of just go back a little bit to like I've got for lack of a better word, your origin story, right? Because we've you've been casting in a while especially in the women's scene, right? And
Mm.
I want to say I think I remember. I mean, I actually got to know you through Grumpy and the
Oh,
legend.
yeah,
I
yeah,
miss
yeah.
him dearly,
Oh,
and
yeah.
but that puts it around like 2019. I want to say I got
Yeah.
to know of you, which is around when I started commentating CS. So, when did you first enjoy commentating? Was CS the first thing you started commentating, and then like generally, when did you start really commentating CS in the amount that you do?
Well, it was roughly around 2019 that I started out. I first just did it a bit for fun at a local land center that was actually sort of like backstage or yeah, behind the scenes volunteering. Just doing like the production and sitting pressing buttons. But it was actually through because I have like a big background in theater. I've been on stage for like my entire childhood and everything. So that is always sort of like second nature to me. And one day I was just asked to do like a sound check because the casters were late. And it was for like it was League of Legends, and those that know me, they know that I am like a complete noob when it comes to League of Legends. But I just had to sit there and just talk something, and they were like, "Oh, you kind of do that quite entertaining. You like when we are gonna do CS:GO one time, you should be commentating." And I was just like, "What? No, no." Because especially back then, I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I obviously I watched the game." A whole lot, and I love the esports side of things, but I was like, "There's no way I'm knowledgeable enough," and I don't have like professional history as a player or stuff like that. So I never really thought like consider myself to be very much qualified for it, but I just gave it a go, and I got a lot of people liked it, and I got to meet other people, and sort of through there the ball started rolling. And especially I went to like a bilingual high school, so therefore being quite proficient with English and just for everything. And I guess with a bit of a year's time, now we're here.
right, because you're from the Netherlands, so you learn Dutch growing up.
Yeah,
That is your natural language.
yeah.
Luckily, the bilingual comes in. That's something I don't really ever think about. I guess coming just from America, Canada area, it's everybody's English. You occasionally have French. You occasionally have
Mm.
Portuguese or Spanish kind of thrown in there as well. But big question on the or on the I'm not qualified to be a caster. What's your face it level?
You don't want to know.
Oh God.
No, oh, you don't want to know. No, I'm not gonna put it out there. No, no, no. You can probably look it up if you really want to, but it's an embarrassment. And honestly, I have to admit, I just don't really play. Like, probably haven't touched it in months actually by now, just because like I don't really have the motivation to like
Yeah.
grind it. Don't really have that many people that sort of like want to play with, because like everyone I know is like level 10. Like, yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna play. They're not gonna be playing with me, but that's fine. I just enjoy my own things. Yeah, no.
So what you're saying is you do have the CS2. No, I'm just teasing.
I wish I had the beta. No.
um, I wanted to ask about really quickly the scene like back in 2019 when you first started, particularly the women's scene, right?
Mm,
And because I remember it was I don't want to say like I remember 2021 particularly for being probably the worst year, right?
mm,
Because there were no events really
yeah.
across the board, and in 2019 we had obviously DreamHack started the program where you had DreamHack Showdown Valencia, and that winner
Yeah.
would qualify for DreamHack Open, and kind of trying to push that scene along.
Yeah.
And then obviously with the pandemic, everything kind of got put on hold. But 2020, we still had those two online DreamHack Showdowns in the summer and the winter. So from your perspective, what was the scene like for you in 2019, and how does it differ from what we see today?
Oh, well, that was really when I first sort of got a glimpse at it. So I wasn't like fully invested into it yet. So for me, everything sort of started with Valencia, of course, and that was sort of when I first got to know a lot of it. So I always sort of like that very far history back. I always had to like how to say like retrospectively like dig into the history. But yeah, for me seeing them on land, which is super exciting, having a good crowd and you name it, then eventually they got invited back then Besiktas or Exet, and well right now the core of G2. But they got then invited to Rotterdam, which because it's in my country I went there. And I just remember there were so many people, and they were shit talking and like, why is this team here, and they're getting smacked. And I just remember because that was sort of like my first time meeting a lot of people like that work behind the scenes at DreamHack as well. And we sat in the crowd watching together, talking about the scene and what it means to us. And that was sort of for me when stuff started to click, and when I was like, I kind of really want to like pursue this as a caster, to sort of like be a counter voice. Because so many people just, I don't know, they just throw this hate and they don't necessarily like mean that much behind it. They just say it, and it just, it's a thing that sort of like everyone sort of collectively thinks, but the way they voice it is not always the kindest. Um, so yeah, that event in itself was sort of like the little like motivation source, as you could say, for me. And right then, like everything was sort of, I think like still started out, so I was still getting to know a lot of things, but ever since then been super involved, and wanting to getting to know more, starting to talk to the players, Petra for example, her being Dutch, and slowly expanding the horizon, I should say. And yeah, unfortunately 2020 2021 they were quite rough. At least 2020 still had like the online showdowns,
Yeah.
but it sucked a little bit with like the regions split up, and that only really coming together in the last year, which I think made last year especially very special.
For sure. And I mean, you talk about kind of everything going all the way away, and now in 2022 and 2023, the resurgence of it all coming kind of back in. What do you look at when you see kind of the scenes coming back together? What do you think in terms of impact right now? There's a lot of good that's coming out of it. Do you think there's a lot that they can also improve on? They continue to kind of push and gather strength going together.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely see that there's a lot of demand for it. There's more orcs than ever within the women's scene. There's just in general just more teams than ever. No one is sitting still. Everyone wants to have a shot. Because this is sort of what you can do it all for. If you're a woman playing Counter Strike. So um right now, like I think the thing that we're sort of like hitting the wall on is perhaps the amount of teams that we're letting into LAN, because 8 at the beginning was very very solid, but right now you can see that the competition is so high, and that sometimes like right now teams are missing out on that final 8, and we are sort of like seeing like, oh, there's actually maybe a little bit more teams that deserve a spot to go there, not just within sort of like the core regions, if we talk EU and NASA,
Yeah,
but I think the wild cards in particular will be taking quite of a hit this year due to just the fact that wildcard qualifiers, we have 3 lands in a year, with Kato having already not necessarily a wildcard invite at all, and then the other 2 events in the year, because of now the redistribution, there's only one wildcard. But this one again goes to Asia, which means either South Africa or Oceania will miss out on either one of the last two. If not, maybe there's even a chance that one also will go to Asia because we don't know how everything will
Yeah.
plan out. So I think like right now everyone is sort of like hoping that for season 3 or no 4 everything can expand a little bit more, maybe not necessarily for the online stages because I think that sort of fits right now, with just EU being a little bit bottomed up. But for LAN, if you want to have sort of like more inclusion of the regions, but also a more competitive scene, maybe I think that would be a good step. Or additionally, or maybe alternatively, if that isn't quite the option, maybe we need to think of adding an extra LAN in the mix. Like, right now we have 2 seasons plus LAN finals, and then there also is then one standalone event, which was right now Kato, but first year was Valencia. To have another event just like that one to even it out and at least make sure that sort of like every region gets represented in at least one event. But yeah, I guess ultimately you want to have not be a team and wait for one event a year. That would still be, I think, a bit of a shame. And right now there are some teams that don't even know if they can have one event a year, and I think right now we're sort of like letting those regions down a little bit. So hopefully we can still like make some changes before
Yeah,
the year
yeah.
ends. Because yeah, I see like the outcries, especially from like people from like Australia saying they're just not gonna be considered and they're just like ready to give up. While last year we all gave them this massive hope. And yeah, it would be, I think, a bit of a shame if we're gonna just let them walk away again.
Yeah, that was, I think, I don't know how many times we've said it on this podcast,
A
Marks,
lot.
but
A
it's
lot.
like I looked at it and it's like Asia, like Oceania came here in season 1
Yeah.
or a week early and beat everybody in North America to go to Valencia, and then they
True.
didn't have anything for season 2, so then like Beyond
Yeah.
obviously signed with CLG at that time, and then the team over in Mind Freak kind
Mind
of
Freak, yeah.
Yeah.
fell apart. And I don't like that was always, I don't want to say that was always the expectation, but I think that if I remember, that team had Viscose in it, and I'm like,
Mm.
she wants to go pro in Apex, so it's like she's already obviously committed to another game entirely,
Yeah.
and she's certainly got potential in that game. But it's like you got 2 players now, and now the scene doesn't know where it's really going, so it kind of wasn't, I
Yeah.
should say, a shock. But then I told Parks at the same time, we've got South Africa where the scene's growing. Like 2019, before the
Mm.
pandemic, I think it was just open, and they got intermediate for the first time, and now they have main for the first time down there.
Yeah.
And ATK qualified as the runners up to intermediate, and it's the first time a women's team's been that high in South Africa. So it's like
Yeah.
they're obviously making history, but I feel like they are being a little bit forgotten
Mm.
so far this year. What is the change that you would make to rectify that? Is that a 10-team land? My suggestion to Parks was that you make the last land of the year 10 teams, and you just make
10.
two
Yeah.
two more qualifier spots. But what would be the if you had to pick one route with which to expand, where would you go?
Yeah. 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 Probably. I mean, 10 is maybe a little bit of a weird number as far as like the groups and everything, the whole format goes. Maybe then alternatively you should already up it to 12. And I actually think that we have enough teams to crank it up to 12. Like, I feel like right now South America is also quite competitive. Like, I could see 3 teams, for example, go or come from that region. Maybe then you have I don't know, maybe even 4 from EU,
Yeah.
depending on how things shift. Yeah, it definitely it just needs to go up. Like 10 is, I think, the minimum. I think ideally, just also for formatting, you would want to go to 12. And then maybe additionally just have an extra event to have like more consistency throughout the entire year, and that no one will get left behind.
Yeah, I mean, 12 teams you could do 4 EU, 3 South America, 2 NA, and then 1 from each of the extra regions, and that adds up to 12. So
Yeah.
that's an option.
Yeah.
That lags
Yeah.
behind NA, but I don't know. You're muted,
Yeah.
Benny.
Oh,
He's muted. In
Benny,
Discord.
Benny is silent.
Benny.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
I said I'm sold. I said I'm sold, definitely. So, God, my bad.
It
What about, I would say, 2024 and beyond? Like, what? Not so much in terms of,
Just the teams and everything.
yeah, just like, what was your expectations be for year 3 of an Impact scene?
What will CS2 bring
Ooh.
us? That's a big question there.
Ooh. So like what? So how would Impact look like in 2024?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you were the
Ooh.
designer.
If I was,
Make us your utopia.
no, but that is just like smack all the money you've got against it. You know?
You have
Which is
unlimited funds and
definitely
unlimited
not
time.
realistic. No, I think like ideally, um, you would want to have like a good enough of an audience so that you can sort of like operate as how to say, like, on your own.
Yeah.
Because right now for the finals and everything, we depend a lot on the DreamHack brand, which I think is good in one way. But you can see if you combine it, for example, with an IAM, the audience for the most part, they're gonna come for the big guys, and they sort of all, well, not everyone, like there is still an audience, but I feel like it can be bigger, and especially if I hate to admit it, but if I look the flip side of Valorant, but
Yeah.
you can definitely see like a bit of a difference as how they treat it, um, and maybe that also just has to do with the fact we are just now a completely separate channel, whereas all the other franchises within ESL, they're put on the main channels of ESL, and we are sort of like caught off by ourselves.
Yeah.
Like I would say, like, include us within sort of like the big picture and not treat us as something completely different. Maybe that could help. And then to just have like really nice, like standalone lands, or studio finals, depending on where you're at. But I hope that then there is a shot for like all of the talent to be there as well, which is right now just, unfortunately, the recession and everything is not helping, and logistics whenever it comes to like combining with other events. So yeah, that's sort of like everything can come together, because right now when we're like talking with everyone on Twitter, it feels like we're one big family, but then we have like these finals and we're not still like fully together yet, and I kind of want us to be. Yeah, so I just hope that it can be like bigger. We can have a bit more of an established audience and really, stand strong as a yeah, as a tournament, I guess, and have more respect and validation. Because there is definitely still some making up to do for that, and there's definitely still some the judge, how to say, like, people with opinions going around, and I feel like overall it is still quite negative. But changes are happening, which are definitely very good. And I just hope that we just continue to make moves, and then maybe by then, no one thinks it's like a strange, or like, yeah, like a little alien anymore.
Yeah, speaking about that, when it comes to overall appeal kind of to the league and to Impact, have you seen a lot of shifting opinions on that? Have you noticed a lot of people coming in going, "Hey, I've never really seen women play Counter-Strike before, but now, it looks very competitive. I'm pretty interested in it." Have you seen the kind of opinions shift on that, or is it still kind of the same, like, "Oh, go back to the kitchen," kind of? I hate to say that is the most, example, but
Yeah.
there's stuff like that still comes through.
For sure. No, that voice is still there, and that definitely sucks. I have definitely seen a shift though. That I think, like, especially when it comes to like Twitter, which is still like one of the main hubs when it comes down to esport. But when there is, for example, I don't know, HLTV makes an article about a team. That right now, I like, at least on Twitter, HLTV, you don't want to look at the forums, honestly. Like, you don't want to
Never,
look at them
never.
anytime.
I don't even want to look at it for the tier 1 scene. Like, it's just,
No. But on Twitter, at least, I feel like when I look at the comments and stuff, like, there's definitely a good amount of hype and people like defending in the comments as well when someone is shit talking, for example. So I feel that the counter voice is getting bigger, and the one that appreciates it. I feel overall, by the way, if I look at HLTV, they're doing a stellar job. Like over the last year, there were great amends, but I feel like especially this year they are quite regularly posting
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
women's scene. Like with for example, right now we just had deciders, and whenever like we've had like one of these days, there's always a little bit of a news flash, which I like to see. So there's more coverage, more awareness, and it becomes overall, I would say, like a bit more of a normal thing. It just comes by like every other tournament does. So it just becomes yeah, part of this flow that is out there, which is good. Um, so overall, comments are still there. Definitely have seen improvement. Is there still work to be done? Definitely yes.
Always, always.
Like whenever it's not necessarily about like casting, but whenever I am casting and we look at Twitch chat a couple of times, there are definitely every single time whenever there's matches on, there would be people saying like, "This looks worse than my Face It game," and why are these people playing competitively? Because I can do a better job. All these kinds of things. Those comments are still out there, and a lot of people say, "Oh, but it's Twitch chat." But
Still
they're always
matters.
yeah, that is also true. But like how to say, like they say this coming from like a sexist ground, like
Yeah.
they like how to say the motivation
No.
behind it is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that yeah, you just know, like you wouldn't really say that to anyone. You would just say like, oh, why is he so trash or something. And
Yeah.
right now it just becomes like the superior feeling, like, oh, I'm a man and I'm better.
Yeah.
Like I can do a better job if I were in that position, if I had the money. But that's not what it is about.
I I
So
I always look at that stuff and I'm like, people would be like, "Oh, I could do better than this," stuff, but I'm like, but if you could, you'd be playing professionally, like
very true.
objectively.
Yeah, and then they're like, yeah, but they, because like they say, like, yeah, they're all level 500 faces, and they get like 100K. Like it's not
It's not the
like
point.
no, it's not
It's
the point at all,
not the
and
point.
they just completely missed the mark. But educating is happening, and not just here. I feel like overall though, when it comes down to the presence of the players, in particular, like there's a lot of people with like crazy like one wouldn't really call like fan bases, but a good amount of following and support behind them. Like a lot of people right now outside of the sort of like the female scene bubble. There's definitely some faces that are sort of like dribbling down into just general Counter-Strike fans. Like take a name like Ana, and a lot of people will now know who that is and say like, oh, that's the one female opper that is insane.
Yeah.
And everyone sort of like a couple of names will sort of stick and have like a good amount of support, which is and the same actually goes for a lot of orcs, like for example, when was it in first year Dallas that there was big playing, and then there was also like how to say, like you had like big male and big female.
Oh, that was Dallas. Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
Dallas. Yeah.
yeah. So then the male team coming to support, and these little things, or a Legion Goose Breeder, those kinds of interactions definitely help a lot. So all these orcs help big time with making it like a
Yeah.
normal everyday kind of situation.
I actually think that the big uh fan base, but also the org have done a really good job of just making that team a part of really what
Yeah,
like the big identity almost, right? Because
yeah.
they do bring a pretty good fan base, and that's the one thing I noticed as well about like South American Counter Strike as well, is that a lot of the
Mm.
Brazilians like they never look at it as, a lot of them I noticed don't look at it as like Furia female, Furia male, Furia Academy. It's all Furia,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they just
yeah.
support Furia, and it's like that's
Exactly. Yeah.
that's kind of what's needed, I think, in a lot of other
Yeah,
regions as well. But
yeah.
I have two questions I want to ask before we do wrap up. The first is about North American Counter Strike because I do want to
Mm.
get your opinion
Okay,
on
okay.
North American Counter Strike.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Obviously, CLG are very good, right? And they are, or
Mm.
ex CLG at this rate, but and they
Yeah.
are very competitive on the world stage. But what do you think holds North America back from having a second like really competitive team on the international stage? Is it the lack of
Mm.
orgs? Is it just the player volatility or the roster volatility? What do you think would be one of the main reasons why they can't
Yeah.
seem to find a second team that's competitive at international land?
Yeah. I feel that overall, or at least I heard like Goose talk about it, there's like quite a large influx of new talent. I remember, I think it was when COG was trialing, they were just looking at every sort of direction in order to find new blood, and ultimately, experience definitely heavily weighs in. But there's a large chunk of new players, and yeah, they're not going to be instantly at the top unless you have like a team full of amazing prodigies. But it takes a lot of time and effort in order to grind that out. So I think that is definitely one thing. Org certainly is a second. Because Chowd, I believe, was talking about it, because Chowd's just recently left Detonate,
Yep.
Yes.
and I think she was talking about just the overall lack of support coming out of orgs in NA, and even though they do have the backing of Detonate, and they were like, very grateful for that, they just notice sort of like this slumber and this slump that they are in overall. So yeah, it's not the big boys that are coming to weigh in. I think like everyone's eyes right now are on Team Liquid now though to pick up CLG, but the sad thing is like, if a lot of people are looking realistically, people are like wondering, are they really going to? Because right now, what looks like NA orgs are just not really ready to invest. And then again, the same, there's already problems with the quote unquote mill scene. Um, so a lot of people are like, yeah, we can't have this extra burden of like also having then a women's team. Um, so I sort of like understand like where it's coming from. But it is a shame that because of like already the NA scene struggling, and therefore they just can't like add in yeah an extra team as well. That's
Yeah.
yeah, it's very unfortunate that that is the case, because ideally, like, you can see how much for example, Europe is thriving. Like, pretty much like every team is represented, I think with the exception of one, and everyone is just going skyrocket, and it's more competitive than ever. And
Yeah.
like I know so many players that have been without an org and now have an org, and the difference that it makes. And it doesn't even have to be like the biggest org ever, but just
Right.
overall having like the staff support, and also the financial support behind you, knowing that you can just do your own thing without having sort of this burden up your own shoulders.
Yeah.
That helps, and getting experience and the knowledge, and how to just learn how to play this professionally, because there's a lot of people who they create a team with some friends or people that they know very well, or they played long enough with, and then they sort of roll into this, and then they haven't really met the whole like, how to say, the professional side of things, and how esports as an infrastructure works. So that in itself is also a good learning experience. So it gives so much value, which sadly, I feel like in NA not everyone gets to thrive upon. But yeah, hopefully that can change
Yeah.
in the near future.
It's interesting you mentioned that. Parks, I'll bring you in a minute because it's financially well, like you mentioned earlier, like with the recession, like it is going to be tougher
Mm,
for teams to
true.
find the money to support two teams, let alone one, right? But
Yeah,
in Europe, I think Aces were the only team that finished unsigned by the end of the season. I think everybody
true.
else had
Yep.
had an organization behind them. But then Detonate did like I'm kind of with Child's when she says like she's very grateful for Detonate because Parks and I would do or Parks produced, but
Mm.
Snicky and I would do the commentary, and we would be looking at the halftime break because obviously it was 3 minutes for the Impact League, and halfway through the halftime, we're like, Detonate have already posted the first half highlights, like they've already clipped all the
Yeah,
highlight,
I
and I'm like, that's
know. Yeah, yeah,
insane,
yeah.
and but like you said, the big players aren't coming in, and I don't think, forgive me for talking about something that might be borderline, but I don't think they were salaried. So I think CLG was
Mm.
still the only salaried. So it's like you do get
Yeah, yeah,
org
yeah.
support, and Detonate could give them everything in the world, but not get to that point
Yeah,
where they can be a salary team and they
exactly.
pursue
Yeah.
CS full time, because that's just a whole different,
That
world
is,
of
yeah.
opportunities. But
Yeah.
Parks, do you have any questions, final questions you want to ask?
No, I mean, I can provide a little bit of insight on the detonate side of things. I mean, Lavoski, bless him, he worked really hard with the Spark squad on that stuff, and I mean, the whole thing when they were coming in was, listen, we're not going to be able to give you a salary. There were, I believe, when they were getting offers, they had one team that were willing to give them a salary, and it wasn't going to be a big one.
Mm.
So going with an org such as Detonate that had a large following already that could potentially bring in new viewers. They had a good support structure in terms of the highlights, in terms of getting tweets out. That
Yeah.
that kind of exposure that they got was really good, I thought, and I think it was a good move for them to go Detonate. But yeah, it's one of those things, like you have that, you have Team Factor coming in to grab the Ruby squad. What you would essentially call bedroom orgs. They're not the big brick and mortar I was gonna say Dallas Cowboys, like Complexity,
Yeah,
like
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
C9, because there
Yeah.
are a few orgs out there that could probably float them for a bit, even at a lower salary. But again, one of the things, recession is oncoming. These orgs are dealing with kind of their payment structures now, and I can totally understand why it's not in the cards. It sucks, but it's just not in the cards right now.
I
Yeah.
it makes me feel bad because I think all three of us had agreed, oh, we should do the EG Starfish game because we haven't covered EG on the
Yeah. Oh.
community
Mm.
stream at
Oh.
all. And then and Detonate have like cut up the Twitch highlights at halftime and posted them, and then I think I tagged them in the tweet that we were going
Yeah.
live with their
You
game.
did.
And after map one, they're like, there is no official stream. I'm like, bro, just look at HLTV for crying out loud.
Or
Yeah, it
the
was
Yeah.
pretty
tweet
painful.
underneath that we tagged and said, "Hey, no, we're live
Yeah,
with your.
yeah,
Here's the tweet,
yeah,
guys."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah. But I wanna ask a one final question, right? And I want to. I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that I kind of found you a little bit through Grumpy, right?
Mm.
And I just want to pay him a little bit of homage by asking
Mm.
you, do you have a favorite memory of Grumpy that you want to share with the stream or
Ooh.
the podcast?
Oh, oh man. Oh, we go way back as well. So this is I believe it was the I can't honestly can't recall which one because we did like the ambush cash cups, I
Yeah,
believe,
I
or
remember
cash,
those.
well, not cash cups, but the cups that they organized, which were like every season or so.
Yeah,
But no, there was one moment where I don't know what happened. I just had a bit of a like a Dinglish moment. So like my brain just had a complete brain fart, and I just like I was, obviously casting English, and my brain is only could think Dutch. I don't even recall what word I said, but I just got something out which did make like it sounded English. I mean, it was English, but it didn't make any sense because like it only would make sense to someone who speaks Dutch because it's like very literally Dutch translated into English, but it didn't make sense. And we just had just a crazy laugh in the middle of the cast. Didn't matter, everything was super casual. But I think that was, the one of the best things. Because like back then everything was like super carefree, and we just always had a good time, which is why I like to do those events. A bit of a shame that ultimately those eventually ended with also the whole COVID thing. But I think yeah, I definitely have good memories and good laughs. So I think that definitely is one of my top moments.
that's awesome. And that's time.
yeah.
So that's it for the interview. So thank
we
you.
would go for hours if we could, but at some
Yeah,
point,
Yeah,
at
we
some
could
point,
talk
that's
about
a
this all
danger.
day.
yeah, we have to cut it off at some point, or else, yeah, we are going to be here all night. And I mean, it is late for
Yeah.
you already, considering that it's 6:30
Yeah.
here, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
eventually have to let you go. And probably the
Yeah.
best point to stop it. Thank you so much for coming on, Vearless. Absolutely
No,
a
thank
treasure
you
to have
guys
you
as
on.
well. It has been amazing, and I love to talk with you guys as well. Love to get new insights. So yeah,
Of
that's
course.
been fun.
Yeah,
All
it's been
right.
excellent. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll be back. Well, Lord knows when this is posted, but we'll be back every, you know how it is, every other Monday, essentially every other Tuesday with the next episode of Brace for Impact. Until then, thanks and take care.